All right, and with that, we can go ahead and get started. So let me just share my screen real quick. Here we go. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Land Monitor Orientation slash refresher course. For those of you who don't know, my name is John, and I am the Land Stewardship Coordinator for the BCT. I am joined by Amy Henderson, our Executive Director, and I think Dee Marsh may be filing in here in a minute. Just to give everyone a refresher, we are the Brewster Conservation Trust, and our mission is to preserve open space, natural resources, and the rural character of Brewster, and to promote a conservation ethic. And we do that because it's important to protect our drinking water, maintain the water quality of our ponds, provide some passive recreation opportunities, scenic views, protect habitat, and that all kind of feeds into preserving the rural character of the town. And, there are many ways that we do that, but we couldn't do it without our volunteers. And we have a couple groups of volunteers, our land monitors, such as yourselves, but also the boundary crew and the work crew, as well as our administrative volunteers. Since our founding in 1983, we've protected over 200 acres, 1,400 acres on over 200 properties. So with, 2.5 full-time staff, it's a pretty tall order. So that's why it's so important that our volunteers, such as yourselves, are engaged with the trust. And I'm just going to pass this off to Amy to talk a little bit about the Americorps Senior Corps.
Ooh. So Americorps Seniors is a program that is run out of Elder Services. My camera's here. So this is an opportunity for anybody who would like to find other volunteer opportunities, as well as just have your hours recorded that you serve with us for Americorps Seniors as well. Joining this program is, like everything, voluntary, but it does provide you a few extra benefits like mileage reimbursement. So you could turn into Elder Services your miles from your home to the properties that you're monitoring and then back to your home if that is a need for you. And then it's just an opportunity for you to also meet other volunteers in the area and, like I said, get involved in other volunteer opportunities. If this is something that you might be interested in, you can feel free to reach out to me for more information, and I can put you in touch with the people at Elder Services that run the program.
Great program. Thank you, Amy. So just to continue on, we talked about some of those group of volunteers, and so we just want to talk about what is a land monitor. So as I mentioned, we own or hold and protect 1,400 acres within Brewster. And so the primary way that we protect that, because, we do have some properties where you might be familiar with, like the Eddy Bay property, where we have a trail and, we have some work days there to maintain the trail and everything. But most of the properties we have are not really, well publicized or open to the public. And so it could just be a little parcel of woods in someone's backyard. And so enable for us to protect that, the primary way we do that is through our annual monitoring visits. And our land monitor volunteers take primary responsibility for those. And I'll get into that a little bit more. And so the responsibility of a land monitor, I had mentioned those property visits. We tend to do those 1 to 2 times a year, typically in the late fall, winter and early spring, when everything hasn't leafed out and it's much easier to see. And then what you want to do is you observe conditions of the land, what sort of state is the forest in, what sort of state is like the wildlife in, you see any deer activity, and then you record any issues that you might also run into. So that's anything like a structure like a shed or a pool, even on our land that we weren't aware of. Any sort of vegetation removal that's going on. We have had a couple properties where people were cutting trees on our land, or they get, some homeowners just kind of every time they mow their lawn, they get a little further and further into that wood line. And then some really common ones are just dumping, whether that's yard debris or trash. Then other things like small scale litter, if you have a property on the roadside, nip bottles are always an issue. One of our monitors has actually kept a log of every nip bottle that he has picked up, and I think they just passed 1,000 over the last year or 2 years. And then there are other things like keeping the trails clear. I can't always be out there walking the trails, making sure all the large branches or any are that are in the trail. I can't always pick them all up. So if you're just out walking, that's a good way to kind of help us maintain the trails. And then you've probably seen a lot of our green property signs along the roads. Sometimes if you're on the property and you're doing a monitoring visit and you just want to pull some of the Virginia creeper that's creeping up off of it and kind of keep it a little open, that's good too. The most important thing you do is you report the issues in written form to the BCT, and I'll get into what that looks like. And so what are these sorts of issues? I mentioned a couple. It's the structures, deer stands. Those are a really big one, especially now. Vegetation removal, boundary violations, and then, those downed trees and evidence of disease. On one of our properties, we have some pine beetles that have infested a couple trees, and we actually have to take those out because they're posing a hazard to some homeowners. But if it wasn't for, someone bringing the issue to us, we wouldn't necessarily have been able to spot it because we're not always out there. And these are just some more examples of that. There's the dumping, there's tires, there's some other things that we like to focus on, or some like interesting things that you might see, whether that's some sort of fungus, some mushrooms. We've been seeing a lot of cool mushrooms lately, and we actually have a walk coming up about fungus and everything. So one of them was like a white coral fungus, super cool. But also other things like, people building forts. That's been an issue, especially during the summer of COVID, when everybody just kind of went a little crazy. A lot of kids didn't have anything to do, so they started building forts in the woods, which is, cool, but not necessarily something we want to encourage if they're chopping down trees to build those forts. There are things we don't ask you, or we want you not to do, like construct new trails or post signage or introduce any plants. We also don't want you removing any invasive species. You'll come to learn that I have a vendetta against all invasive species. So although I would love to, set everybody loose out there, we have to do it in a very methodical manner. So with that, we ask you not to use any power tools or pesticides or herbicides on the properties, and enter into any confrontational situations. A lot of times, since you guys would be the eyes and ears on the ground, you can clearly see a homeowner is cutting down trees into our property, and they might be out, and you might want to say, hey, you can't really do that. But just for the safety of our volunteers and everything, we ask you not to do that. If what your role is reporting that to us, and so we can come from a professional standpoint, and have a little bit of authority to be able to tell them not to do that, and also offer some actions for remediation. And then when you do go out on your visits, it's always good to bring a number of things, including the property book, which is similar to this right here. It's a binder. It has all the information you need to monitor the property, including the deeds, any maps, anything like that. Also some older monitoring reports, so you can see what some of the issues have been in the past, and just give you a little focus area when you're walking through the woods. You also want a new blank monitoring report, notebook and pen for any notes, any field guides if you have any. But we do have some at the office, so if you're interested, we can loan them out to you. A camera. I mean, nowadays everybody's phone is a really high quality camera, so just be sure to bring your phone, because it's always important to have that sort of connection, and always let people know where you're going. And then on top of that, insect repellent. This is Cape Cod, so deer ticks are an issue year round. What I like to really encourage our volunteers is to use permethrin, which is a way to treat your pants. It's not like insect repellent where you just spray it on while you're wearing it. It's more of like a treatment where you soak your pants in it, let it dry, and then it repels and kills ticks for up to 30 washes. If anyone's interested in that, I have some more information about it, and I can tell you where to get them. I use it all the time. The stuff's awesome. And then, some gloves and clippers for like pruning, especially if you're battling something like a catbrier. Or in addition to that, trash bags. Like I said, trash is an issue mostly everywhere. You'll be out in the middle of the woods and see a balloon that just flew in and is degrading. And that's some of the small scale stuff that we want kind of picked up when it's spotted. What we don't ask you to do is kind of, remove some of the larger debris that we find. That photo of all the wood that was stacked, any cinder blocks, that sort of thing, that's stuff that we can organize a work crew day around to be able to get out of there. So we don't want anyone breaking their backs, lugging, 50 pounds of stones out of the woods or anything like that. And then if sunscreen is always big, I've forgotten mine. So you might notice that I got a couple of sunburns, even though it's mid-October here. And then a first aid kit is always good to have. And then some things you want to really take note of, any sort of erosion issues, encroachments of vegetation. Erosion issues can be a couple things, if there's a trail and with all these heavy rains, it's starting to really rut out and kind of pose a little bit of a safety hazard to people, or if it's just diminishing the quality of the trail, that's something we want to learn of. If your property is right on the road and there's a whole bunch of road runoff just kind of destroying the area, that kind of impacts the area, and we want to learn about that. And then, anything else, safety hazards. I had mentioned those pine trees that had to be removed. Any evidence of wildlife. We have some really cool wildlife on Cape Cod. I've run into a couple foxes. You see deer everywhere, so deer I'm kind of annoyed with, but turkeys, I love learning about turkeys. And then even some fisher cats, that sort of stuff is really, really cool. Also some vandalism. Unfortunately, we've had people vandalize, like Whale Rock at Windmill Meadows. So that's stuff that we want to learn about. People tend to vandalize our, maps, or even trees that have fallen down. They'll vandalize. Same with some rocks, stuff like that. And then any significant changes that you might have noticed. Being the land monitor for a certain property, these properties kind of become your own. You are out there the most. You're monitoring them the most. You're there year after year after year, so you can really track these changes. Is all the pine trees, are they starting to die off? Is a new plant kind of making its way in? Do you see more evidence of people walking through the path? That sort of thing. And boundary encroachments as well. And I'll kind of get into what those are in a second here. One thing I do want to talk about, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is hunting. It is hunting season right now. I think it's deer and turkey season. And so although the map to the left of the screen is where hunting is allowed, but that doesn't necessarily mean people aren't hunting in other areas. We've had hunting stands right off the trail at Eddie's Sisters that we've had to remove. We've had hunting stands at, Baker's Pond. I think there's, they're everywhere. Even on our office property, there have been hunting stands. So it's always a good idea to, when you're out monitoring the properties in the middle of the woods, bring an orange vest. If you don't have an orange vest, we do provide them. And so it'll be yours to keep while you are monitoring for us. If at any point you decide not to be a land monitor anymore, we just ask that we have it back. They are kind of expensive. And yeah, hunting season runs from October 4th to March 8th of 2022. If you're interested in the exact dates in the season and all that stuff, you can find it on the Massachusetts state website. And then that form that I keep mentioning to bring out, sort of that paper trail that we want to have, it looks like this. We do have fillable forms. Otherwise, you can just fill out like a regular paper form. And so it's just a log of what you've seen. Is there any encroachment, any dumping? We do ask that you take some photos of what you've seen and give like a general description of where it is. It doesn't have to be precise. But the photos are really important. And you can just email them to me That way we can actually have a log of what was going on. And it's just, general information about all that stuff. One thing I do want to point out is, we added, please share anything that makes you feel this property is special. Because there's a lot, what tends to happen is our monitors just kind of focus on the negative. And that was kind of upsetting for a lot of them. And that's not what we want to do. We want to, encourage you to really connect with these lands. And so if there's anything that you've noticed that you really care about, please let us know. And we'll be sure to highlight that and make a point of that. I ran into some American chestnut trees at one of our properties. And so that really, promoted the property for me. It's one of the reasons I love it so much. Those sorts of things. And so this is what happens to each report. Or what we found for the longest time was our volunteers would submit this report and it would just kind of go into, the ether, and they wouldn't hear anything about it. And the actual process wasn't very clear. And so this little flow chart to the right is something I wrote up to sort of illustrate what the process is. I don't expect you to be able to read it. It's just to kind of highlight what that is. And essentially each report is saved into our server. And then I have to go out and determine the scale and the priority of the issue. And then we, update you on the status of the issue. And then from that scale and priority, we kind of have an action. What are we going to do? Are we going to post signage, hold a work day to clean up some of the trash? Do we have to get a professional surveyor to actually figure out where the boundary is, if it's that significant? And then this year we'll also be having a checklist of, those reported encroachments and where they kind of fit into this little process and at what stage are they? Have we written the first letter to the abutter? Have I not even gone out and checked it out? Those sorts of things. And so that's all to just kind of keep you guys in the loop a lot more, because that has been an issue in the past where, land monitors haven't heard anything about it. And yeah. And so today, if you're a new volunteer, just make sure you hand in your completed volunteer registration. There are download and fillable forms on the BCT website. Sign up to monitor, you'll be assigned a couple properties. And then if you are a new monitor, you will be paired with a mentor, which is one of our land monitors who've been doing it for a while and can kind of show you the ropes. And then you guys go out and do a site visit. And yeah. Oh, before I forget, going back to the property monitoring report, these reports are available on our website. So I just want to show you where those are. And I'm also going to show you guys a couple maps too, just some tools for your toolkit. So if you go to the Brewster Conservation Trust website and you go to, I did check this out earlier. You scroll down to the, oh shoot, explore, support, volunteer, thank you. You go down to the volunteer page and you scroll down to the go to land monitor page here. And then this brings you to this. You can go to some of our reports, which are
John, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm not? Oh,
no.
Okay. Let me share my screen again. All right. So just to double back here. So you go to our Brewster Conservation Trust website. You go to support, volunteer. That brings you to the volunteer day. Just to go over it again. And then you scroll down to go to the land monitor page. And that brings you to this. So there's a map of Brewster that you can check out, the property monitoring report, and then the conservation restriction monitoring report. Because those are two different things. And if you have any questions about that, I can really go into it. But these are fillable, so you can say, all that stuff. Otherwise, you can just print it out, or we'll provide their own copy. That map that I had talked about, we do have, sorry, this screen. We do have a couple maps that are available to monitors. This is the town assessor's one, and it just gives you sort of a good idea about some of the lands that we protect and everything. One that we are working on providing to all our monitors is the Bct Interactive Map. And this was created by Mary Doucette, who was our intern for 2 summers and then our Americorps placement last year. And so what she did is she brought together all of the properties that we protect, our fee simple ones like the hay property, which we own outright, or some of the ones where we hold those conservation restrictions. So those private properties that we still monitor, like the Cape Cod Museum of Natural History or the town land. And so this is a really cool tool where you can kind of figure out a couple things. We have elevation contours. So some of our properties are pretty steep, even for Cape Cod. And then there are other things that you can check out, where are the wetlands and that sort of thing. Then there's some measuring tools that you can use, like figuring out where the corners are. You can get the coordinates of each corner. You can do degrees, minutes, seconds. And if I want to drop a pin, I just go like that. A little bit closer. And then you can write that down. And so when you're out in the field, if you have a GPS or even if you have your phone, nowadays all the phones also have a compass with coordinates and everything. You can use that to kind of orient yourself in the field a little bit better. We do want to have maps with coordinates of all the boundary points in each boundary notebook that we will make. But with over 200 properties, it's kind of a time-consuming task. So yours might not have it. So this is just a good tool for you to be able to go out and orient yourself. And I think those are all the things that I wanted to show. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? I know I kind of blew through that. Yeah.
John, will we be able to get a copy of your slides?
Yes, this whole thing was recorded, so you'll be able to watch the recording again and listen to me blab, but we can also provide you a copy of the slides as well.
Okay.
Hi, this is Rob Michaels. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Let me turn my video on so I'm not just a letter. So I just moved to Brewster, or full-time to Brewster, and live on Crosby Lane, which I noticed there's a couple of little properties, I think Mitchell Road.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be interested in learning to be a land monitor if they're needed. I don't know what additional training is required or whether those particular parcels are unassigned, but in general, I'd be interested in helping out. And when you showed that map, I wondered if it can be sucked into Avenza Maps. I don't know if you ever heard of that app, but you can suck maps into it, and then it'll superimpose your GPS location on it. I'm using it to help create an orienteering map or update the orienteering map in Nickerson. And it's kind of a cool app that I just learned about. But anyway, I thought it might be useful for land monitoring purposes. But that's
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I haven't tried to use it with Avenza yet, but that's absolutely something that we can do, or try to figure out and see if we can do it. In terms of monitoring, we will definitely try to pair you up with the sort of property that you want to monitor, especially because a lot of our monitors tend to have lots of properties. So if it is already assigned, we might be able to work with that land monitor, and either you can both monitor it at the same time. A lot of our properties kind of require that, or we'll be able to sort of work with them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you just want to make sure that you fill out that volunteer registration, which is also available on our website.
Yep.
And just email it to myself or Dee, and we'll
I
get
think I already did. That's how I learned about this.
Okay, fantastic.
Zoom session.
Yeah. And then in terms of other training, I had mentioned pairing new volunteers up with a mentor who, you both go out into the field and do sort of a site visit. Because even though my PowerPoint was super informative and you guys ought to know everything right away, actually going out into the field and, being able to point at some things, it kind of clicks everything into place. So that's either with a mentor, one of our volunteers, or it's with myself. And so that would just really be the other training day, I suppose.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And welcome to Brewster full time.
Thank you. Our first community action was voting for the sea camps, and I was pleased to note that BCT has played a big part in the funding for it, which was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if Amy wants to talk a little bit more about that. I can highlight the Cape Cod Sea Camps page on our website.
John, one other
Yes.
quick question. You mentioned invasive species, and but didn't go into detail. So what are typical things we should report? I mean, we all see ivy that's, on trees and the vines on trees and things like that, but could you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, actually, precisely what you mentioned, just letting us know if there are some invasive species there. There are some that are kind of worse than others and require some swift action to be able to stop them from encroaching on the whole area. So that's things like Japanese knotweed. If you are able to identify it and you just spot a couple of them, let us know, and then we'll quickly go out and try to dig those out and limit that invasion. Unfortunately, they will be everywhere. The more invasive species you learn about, the more you'll be able to see them. So we can't do everything, unfortunately, but just actually knowing where there are invasive species on our property can help us better make those decisions, especially if it's just like a newly invaded site, because the chances of controlling it and protecting that space are exponentially higher in the early stages of those invasions. And if you'd like more resources, I have a million, so I can link those to you as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Peter Bradley, I saw that you had a question.
Yeah, my wasn't so much a question as a confirmation that we could pick up the property books at the Hay Center there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Just
just come by there and get that.
Yeah, just shoot D or me an email. Actually, me an email, so we can make sure it's all ready and set to go.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Then it's ready for us. Good.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
So this is a copy of the property book. We're not going to be trusted with the original document, are we?
Well, that's something we're trying to move towards, having copies of the actual book. For right now, some of them are the actual document, so it's important that they are returned in a timely manner because they are legal documents, and also taken care of. Don't drop them in the river or anything like that. We are in the future really trying to move towards having just a field notebook, which is just sort of the bare bones things that you would need in the field. So like maybe a deed and a survey plan and a map, plus a few other old monitoring reports. With over 200 binders, it's kind of a big task. So it's being worked on slowly, but
okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Anyone enthusiastic? Bruce.
Just a question regarding the work crews. Where is the work party next week, Tuesday?
Windmill Meadows. If you park at Drummer Boy Park, we'll be working, removing some autumn olive and collecting some native seed.
Okay.
John, I have a question.
Oh. Yes, Jane.
Is there a better time to come and pick up the book and a vest, or is it just whenever? Are you around at a certain time each day? I guess that's what I'm asking.
I am always around in the mornings. So if the mornings work for you, just let me know. Otherwise, if you just want to shoot me an email and let me know when you would be able to get into the office, we can certainly make it work. I'm very flexible with that. My job is flexible.
Okay, that's great.
So to answer your question, whenever, wherever.
Okay.
Oh, and what we'll be doing going forward now is we'll be having sort of a monthly check-in with all of our land monitors. And so if anybody had monitored in like the past month, it'll be sort of a Zoom like that. It's just sort of a platform for you to ask any questions about some of the things that you've seen, ask about the status of your encroachment, ask for any clarification. And that's just to sort of connect with our monitors a lot more and make the process a lot clearer. And so, yeah, it'll be open to anybody who, monitored in the last month or two, to all the land monitors. So always be on the lookout for that.
I would just say, building on that, if there's any current land monitors on here who want to share tips and tidbits with our new monitors, would love to hear those.
Well, I'm a new monitor, Jane Johnson, and I've only done it once, and that was last fall, or last late fall. And the help that Beth Finch gave me was really, really great. So I'm planning to go out the next time on my own and see what happens. And, but we did report a couple of issues at the property that I was monitoring, and I never heard back anything.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that I'm really trying to deal with now. A lot of the issues, we get them and we have, a dozen coming in. And from there, we have to deal with these on top of everything else we're doing. So it's not that we're ignoring you. Sometimes they just kind of get put on the back burner, and then a few months has gone by. And that's something I'm really trying to work on this year. And by doing that, we're having the platform of having those monthly check-ins with all our monitors. That little check-in sheet will be in each property binder, as well as just, more communication between me and whatever the other volunteers.
Thank you.
And John, one thing I can add is that when you do your monitoring, you're walking the trail or whatever, I found it really helpful to have that plastic bag to pick up litter. Definitely have your phone with you. Wear the vest for sure. You look real official when you have that vest on, and the little green hat. Feels like you're really important. And also, and maybe I'm lucky because one of my properties is very close to my house. But they say 1 or 2 times a year, take a look at it. Go more often. Just go for a walk. Go check it out. The more you go onto that property, the more you'll get familiar with what's what and what's maybe not normal. So you might catch something earlier just by once in a while just taking a walk. Doesn't have to be an official visit, but at least you get you an idea of what the property has and or doesn't have, and get a feel for. So when you do your official visit, you'll be more familiar with it.
That's a great point, Peter. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, we don't require you to only go once a year, but what we do want is that report that I had mentioned, that gets filled out once a year.
Right.
Because that really is our record. If you do go and you don't have the report or anything like that, and you do see something that's off, please just email me and we'll deal with it. But what we, like, the bare bones requirement is just that report once a year. And then that way we actually have a track of what's going on. Lem.
So John, should we be dealing with you or Amy or Dee, or I want to make sure that when we make phone calls, we're talking to the correct person. And
Yeah.
You guys are at least you guys are talking to each other.
Yeah, so you can deal with me directly, either by shooting me an email. I'm a little bit better about getting back, or giving me a call. If it is like an issue that you saw on the trail, I do ask that an email might be better, because that email kind of gives us a little written record of what was going on.
Okay, so in terms of scheduling, picking up a property book and vest, all the appropriate accoutrement, that kind of stuff, we should do that for you.
Yes, please.
Okay.
John?
Yes.
So a couple of my properties, it's very hard to find the corners or the borders. Are the books now updated with the coordinates, or do we go to that map you showed us? What's the best way to find those corners?
So we are, not all of the books are updated with those maps, unfortunately. Part of the way that I can get a property book ready for someone is getting those maps ready, even if it's just sort of a hand-drawn, listing what the coordinates are. So it's kind of a mix of both. I definitely want to give all the land monitors the tools to be able to monitor their property. So you can either use the maps, or you could ask me to get the map ready for you. Does that kind of make sense? It's kind of a wishy-washy answer.
How do you get to that last map that you showed us? Is that available to us? The
It
one-
will be, yes, that link will be on our land monitor page.
But it's not
and
there now.
It's not there now. I think we have to add in like maybe 1 or 2 properties and just make sure it's good to go. But it will be in time for you guys to do all your visits. And it's really just an interesting tool to kind of play with.
Thank you.
John, you had a question?
Just to add a couple of things from experience, I think one is that preparation is everything, not just about all the things you bring, but looking at the plan. And this speaks to Tova's point as well, I think. Looking at the plan and identifying the corners on Oliver or something else, so you've got all the coordinates noted down if they're not in the book. So you're all prepared, you know what you're looking for, kind of thing, before you go out there. And another key part of that, although everything is sort of digital now on maps, and we tend to rely on that more, is the old original survey map, the old-fashioned one that came with the original documents. Make sure you look that up as well for anything that's a bit complicated, because that has features on it that it shows, you know, the contours and little spots of water and stuff like that aren't on any of the digital maps, and then particularly which boundary markers are really there and which aren't, which have concrete bounds set and that kind of thing. And all of that information is additional local information that's useful to finding where the boundaries are and keeping oriented when you're out there. So those are 2 things I think are useful.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Survey plans are a huge help, really. They'll list things like he mentioned, some property boundaries, and that could be a rock wall that's listed on the plan. Otherwise,
It could just be a notch in a rock or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's helpful
so,
if you can find it.
Yeah. So if those site plans should be available in the property binders. Unfortunately, not every property has a site plan. And one thing we're thinking about doing is actually holding just a quick workshop on actually how to read those maps, because they can be kind of confusing. So if that's something anybody's interested in learning about, please let us know, and we'll be able to hold that and hold that sort of workshop, or even just working one-on-one, because it is something, you know, you kind of have to sit down and kind of get into for a minute, but then once it clicks, you'll be able to figure it out. Bruce, I saw that you had a comment, question.
I think John pretty well covered it for me, so thanks, John.
Any other questions, comments, any sort of trainings that anybody wants to see? Like, how can we, this is particularly for our older monitors, is there anything we can do to make the job easier for you guys and easier for our newer land monitors? All right, perfect, fantastic. And again, one thing that going forward, oh yes, Mark.
John, as far as the surveys that you started to pull a list together, I know I had sent you a number of ones that I'd like for my properties, because I have no idea where the boundaries really are.
Yeah.
When do you expect to kick that off for the next session?
Yeah, within the coming weeks. You know, November is kind of when we'll start getting more boundary crew days out there. We have a boundary crew training in mid-November. Those dates, I want to say, are the November 11th. Be on the lookout for those. So within the coming weeks, we'll really get our team together and start doing a lot more of those, because going forward, you know, the boundary crew is going to be a big focus for me, as well as, you know, the open communication. That is an issue you'll run into when you're monitoring a property. The boundaries aren't always obvious. And so, you know, sometimes it's just in the middle of the woods and your property is, you know, a couple 100 feet across, tied into other conservation land. And if that's the issue, you know, we do want to know about it. But if you run into any issues there, like any encroachment issues, and you're still not sure where the boundaries are, just make a note of it, just so we know and we can go out and kind of figure it out. What has happened in the past, some of our monitors don't know where the property boundaries are. It's not entirely clear. And so they feel like they can't complete the monitoring report. And that's not what we want. What we want is, we still want that record, even if they're not clear. Because if it's written on there, then we have like that sort of timestamp. And then if it turns out that the issue isn't on our property, we can still deal with it by maybe letting the town know, or just sort of moving on. Is that clear to everyone? Cool. Thank you. As Amy sent in the chat, if you're interested, our boundary crew training is November 16th and 17th. These will be field sessions and you only need to attend one. They will be hosted by me. Bruce.
John, is there still a separate report for conservation restrictions versus, fee ownership?
Yes, there is. And so just to give some people some background, when we say fee simple, those are properties that the Conservation Trust owns outright, so they're ours. When we say conservation restriction, those are private properties from homeowners or the town. So, maybe one of you guys has a CR on your property. And so what we do is we just monitor that property to make sure the homeowner is upholding that CR, or the town is holding that CR. And so because they're different legal documents, they do have different reports. I can pull up the conservation restriction one and the fee simple one right now. But they are just, the questions are a little bit different. Like with the, let's see, share screen. This is the conservation restriction monitoring report. It asks questions like, is the homeowner, or who the current homeowner is, were they represented at the site? Are there any violations to the terms of the CR? Does a homeowner agree to correct these violations? So those sorts of things. While the land monitor property monitoring report really just asked, what are the stewardship issues observed? Where are they? What area did you examine? Those sorts of things. And if you do monitor a CR, we don't ask that you are a legal expert on it, and try not to make any sorts of calls in the field about it, because each conservation restriction is different and has, some wiggle room on some things and requires a little bit of interpretation. So if there is a question of it, just, make a note of it and we can still deal with it. Does that answer your question, Bruce? Fantastic, thank you. Bonnie, you're muted.
Nice session, John. I just want to mention, I don't know if you will be assigning conservation restrictions to some of the newer people, but one really important part of conservation restrictions is to contact the property owner, and preferably to establish a relationship with the property owner, because you're walking on their property, and oftentimes they might do something that isn't, every conservation restriction has an explanation of what you can and can't do on that conservation restriction. So you look at that in advance. And oftentimes the owner may not even realize they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. But again, primarily establish a positive relationship with them, and you can maybe point out something, but most things probably should go back to John, and so the staff could do some following up. It's a little bit different. I mean, when I do my conservation restrictions, I do at least an email, not a phone call to the people who own the property.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bonnie. We do really depend on those sorts of relationships with property owners and homeowners and everything. Sometimes you will get a case where you can't get in contact with the CR holder. We have had that issue on a couple of our properties. So I think what sometimes it's a case by case basis, but if you have like a recorded recorded list of times you tried to contact them through letters or emails or phone calls, I think it's okay to just kind of go out on the property. And you can bring one of us as well. Always good to have sort of that BCT representation. And that's something else I want to stress. These monitoring visits are also an opportunity to connect with other volunteers, or just connect with one of your friends and just kind of go for a walk in the woods. They are not meant to be, a sort of like a chore. So if you want some company out there or whatever, if you're uncomfortable going out into the woods by yourself, please just let us know and I will make myself available to head out there with you, because one of the good parts of my jobs is that I get to walk in the woods. So I'm never against doing that. Any other questions or comments or anything? Fantastic. If anyone does think of anything, any tips for new volunteers or any questions for myself, please feel free to email me. It's super easy. It's my name, jon@brewsterconservationtrust.org. But all that information will be available to you as well. And like I said, like Amy said in the beginning, this meeting was recorded for some of our volunteers who couldn't make it today. And then the PowerPoint will also be available for anybody just to review. All right. Cool. If nobody has any other comments or questions or anything, I think with that, we can wrap it up.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for coming by. It was good to see your faces
Thank
virtually.
you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
See everyone.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the beautiful day.
Bye-bye.